Welcome to my kitchen. I'm very hungry. I have a few things in my pantry that I desperately need to use up. One of those things being onions. What better opportunity to use up an ingredient for a dish that you've never had before but you've always wanted. I want to make French onion soup today, but there's a catch. I do not have all the ingredients I need. I do have a recipe that I've peeked at from a culinary textbook, so I know how it should be done, and I'm not doing it that way. So I'm going to make it how I want to make it today. I've never had it, I've never made it, so I'm just gonna make it up as we go. Sounds great.
All right, this is the part where the voiceover begins because we're actually going to cook something today. We're going to use 2 onions for this recipe because I'm just cooking for myself. I don't need a lot. Cutting board and your big boy chef knife. And of course later I'm going to realize that my surface is much too slippery for my cutting board. In the meantime, we're going to take off the extra pieces of paper on the very outer layer of the onion. Don't worry about peeling it for now because we're going to peel it later. Grab your big boy chef knife and give your onion a good death grip, and it was at this very moment that she realized that this cutting board was not going to work very well.
I need rubber.
After a very inspirational serenade, I did discover that these rubber gloves were perfect in keeping my cutting board from sliding around on this glass tabletop. We're finally moving on with the recipe, so grab your onion and your big boy chef knife and give it a good chop. The classic rookie mistake. Don't forget to hone your knives, kids. It helps with the chopping your onions. All jokes aside though, honing really should be my standard practice before I even start cutting anything. I'm just not very practiced at it yet. Okay, I promised, and we're gonna do it. We're gonna finish getting the skin off of this thing. So go ahead and chop off both the tip and the root, and then chop your onion in half, and this is gonna make it super easy to get the rest of the skin off the onion. Now for this recipe, I have chosen to cut my onion in Julienne style, so I've got the root facing away from me, and I'm gonna be cutting thin slices with the grain of the onion. Make sure you've got a good solid grip on your onion the whole time that you're doing this, and when you get to the end, as it gets smaller, you can always flip your onion around to a more comfortable position so you can safely finish cutting it. Go ahead and finish peeling and slicing all of your onions and set them aside because we're moving on to the next step of the recipe. Grab yourself an appropriately sized saucepan, and I'm using a whole stick or a half cup of butter, unsalted, and we're going to have this on low on the stovetop, and we're going to add our onions to it. We want to reduce them and cook them till they're caramelized. Now this smells just as delicious as it sounds, so I know it looks like a lot right now in the saucepan, but as it reduces, it's going to reduce. So you're going to end up with a lot of that moisture content being drawn out of the onions, and they're going to get smaller. I've put this in time lapse so you can see it, and believe me, this was like a 30-40 minute process of just cooking it on low, caramelizing it, letting it reduce. Just make sure you don't burn it, so you got to keep watching and stirring. About 30 to 40 minutes later, it should be looking and smelling delicious and caramelized, and now we're going to start deglazing the bottom of the pan. Now this is usually where the alcohol would come in, but I don't drink alcohol, I don't cook with it, and so I'm using chicken stock, and I'm doing about 8 fluid ounces, and we're doing a process that's called au sec, which is French, and I can't pronounce it, so I am so sorry if that was wrong. I just offended someone, I'm sure of it. So as we're doing au sec, we're going to be adding 8 fluid ounces of chicken stock at a time, and we're cooking it down until the liquid is basically dry. We're going to repeat this process 4 to 6 times. I think that traditionally you would do this with beef stock, but I had chicken stock, and so I warned you, we were going rogue, and that's what we're doing. We're using chicken stock. About 40 minutes later, I was able to do all 4 or 5 steps of those 8 fluid ounces of chicken stock at a time, and now it's time to start flavoring my soup. And since I didn't have beef stock, I'm just going to add 2 bouillon cubes of beef And I imagine that's going to help round out the flavors and kind of deepen it a little bit, since I feel like beef is a little bit of a deeper flavor than chicken stock is. And I'm going to go ahead at this point, since I've added those beef bouillon, I'm just going to add the rest of my chicken stock. I'm eyeballing it to the consistency that I want. It is a homemade chicken stock, that's why it looked a little chunky. And there is no sodium in my chicken stock, and so that's why I feel okay about adding the beef bouillon cubes. But if you're watching your sodium, maybe be careful about that. Now we are adding the seasonings that I want in my soup, and so I added a bay leaf, some black pepper, dry thyme, and kosher salt, and season to taste. Now since I don't have fresh seasonings, you gotta keep in mind that dry seasonings take a while to kind of constitute and hydrate in your soup, so you have to give it another like 20 minutes or so at least to kind of let the flavors get to know each other, and then the soup is done. Now, apparently I'm a barbarian, because I do own a ladle, but I decided not to use it. Now, typically you'd want a good cheese like Swiss or Gruyere cheese on top of your French onion soup, but I had neither of them, and so I used Parmesan, and I stuck it under a broiler. Now, the aesthetics are different because it's Parmesan, but this was so good. Now, like I said in the intro of this video, I've never had French onion soup before, so those of you who have had it, try this recipe and let me know how close I got, if I got close at all. I'm very curious. Just let me know. I just want to know. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all later.